Well, I'm not really sure how to transition from a symphony by William Boyce to the Winnipeg Jazz Orchestra, so we're just going to dive right into it. This weekend, the WJO presents Suite 150, a big band portrait, music that will showcase the diversity of our country, capturing unique perspectives of the Canadian spirit by Canadian big band composers and arrangers. I'm joined by one of those composers now, Montreal-based Juno Award winner, Christine Jensen. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Winnipeg.
Oh, well, so glad to have you here. I know you just got off the plane and made your way right down to the studio. I want to begin by asking, a musical portrait of Canada, the world's second largest nation, where do you even begin?
Well, this was my question. I'm Montreal-based, but I grew up on Vancouver Island, so I've covered those territories a lot. And so for myself personally, and I've looked through the programming as it came in because I've never seen so many commissions in one show in my life, actually. So kudos to Winnipeg. You could go into the Guinness Book of World Records on this one, on the topics that came up. And everybody had very personal topics to do with either the history of Canada or the land, a lot of landscape. And my personal topic is called maple. Because I love maple syrup. No, because, well, I do. But I just felt that, it is a symbol of our flag. I wasn't even thinking of that. I was thinking more about, I think the period of time I was writing it was when the leaves were coming down and just watching literally the minutes of change going through the leaves and thinking of the mosaic of how many different maples are across Canada, and then the mosaic of the people and the changing color of this nation. So that's all wrapped up in one sentence.
What a beautiful sentence that is. Like you mentioned, I mean, you're BC born, Quebec settled now. You've traveled around Canada, and you have that unique perspective of being a touring musician. Does that pan-Canada aspect really play into the composition? Like you were saying, the changing maple and how it is such a symbol.
Yeah, I think so. I think as Canadians we have challenges in understanding how large our country is. It's very difficult to imagine the size of this nation, and I haven't even been north. I'd love to go.
You and I both.
That sounds like a whole other huge event to explore, but definitely horizontally, I've hit every city and every corner, and there's so many special things about this country and about the nation. But I do feel that also, as the nation goes forward, this sort of mosaic idea of colors changing and seasons changing is going to change the personality of our country as it moves forward, which is so different than, say, Europe or Asia, where, especially Europe, I was just there, and it's like, man, there's identification to each country that's massive through their food and their culture. Here we have a mosaic on every level.
Yeah, a mosaic, that is absolutely true. I want to ask you a little bit about big band or jazz orchestra. Your first 3 discs were for small ensemble, right? And then
Yes.
And then you took home the Juno Award for a contemporary jazz album, Treelines, in 2011.
Yeah.
And then you follow up that award with your next disc, another Juno Award winner, Habitat, in 2014. Evidently, there's something special about jazz orchestra. I was wondering, what do you think that is?
The absolute depth of honesty and sort of stripping down of everything, of giving yourself to the concept of composing for 20 musicians and battling against electronic versus acoustic instruments. I love it. I mean, it's just my voice. It's one of my voices. I equally love playing small group, but just once the ball started rolling with this music, I think it just turned into part of my personality with this idea. It is hard. It's hard to get 20 people in a room out of their sheer will. And so you have to write really great music that they want to play, I think, to make it really happen at a high level. So I'm really lucky. I'm privileged. I'm honored. I've had great teachers and studies and And it's made it so that I can carry my music around the world too, to play with other orchestras. So it's really fun.
I mean, you're an individual in an orchestra, but you're part of that greater whole, right? And you have to be invested in what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's multitasking, but there's a lot of roles I'd love to play. But this is one where I think you get to be much more of a producer of what your vision is. It's much like making a film. You have the director and the actors. I've been an actor for a lot of it, or the writers, or I've been the writer for a lot of it. But with a big band or jazz orchestra, they're two different words, but they're the same. It's very complicated. My music is not exactly Count Basie, although the roots are there for me. I very much grew up playing that music. So in that sense, I love being the director and making a movie and telling a story through my music.
I had the chance to talk with Scotty Barnhart, who was just in town for the last WJO show.
Okay.
And to me, I mean, it's that idea of also being a player, right? You mentioned the roles that you have, and you're a very busy individual. Again, I'm so thankful just to have you here in the studio. I was listening to an interview, or I guess watching one, and you talk about your personalities as a person. There's Christine, the saxophone player.
Yeah.
There's the big band leader, and then there's the composer who you describe as the essence. How do those other two personalities kind of motivate you as a composer, first and foremost, I suppose?
It's a bit of a cycle. It's an ever-turning cycle. I can't just sit by myself and compose. I go crazy. I can't just play my saxophone without coming up with ideas for it. So, and then organizing and producing things is another level. I just, when it comes down to it, I think playing. I could probably, I always tell my students, envision playing a solo concert by yourself, whatever your instrument is. Piano, they get away with murder, but everybody else, think about how you can tell a story over that period of time of 60 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever. But how can you do it so that you're telling a story and having fun and being in the music yourself? It's kind of a nice way to place myself sometimes after organizing music and then all the people and then making sure everything sounds right. To be by myself with my saxophone is equally rewarding.
We so often think of jazz as this idea of a real personal involvement, this improvisation aspect that you're not just a player, you're also a kind of a composer on the spot.
Yes.
And to me, as someone who hosts a classical show, the same thing happened back in the day with classical composers, like the obvious examples like Mozart and Beethoven. They were players, but there was something inside them they needed to get out. You were talking about your students. Do you encourage them to compose as well? Is it something that you say,
yes.
hey, you should really pursue this?
I think in jazz especially, because the music, this art form is always evolving, and if we stick with playing classic material, it's pretty difficult these days to get sort of on the stage at a high level without trying to envision your own concepts. I mean, composition and improvisation, if you're a composer, you're like, what's improvisation?
Yeah.
It's composition slowed down. If you're an improviser, what's composition? It's just... Or sorry, I had the other way around.
Yeah.
But it's sped up. So it's composition sped up. And it's like, this is the essence of this music. It's the beauty of this music. And anything can happen on stage. I mean, it evolves. I think hearing music live is the most important thing we can do for our souls in evolving as a nation, actually. So that's part of the process, is just getting into that being in the moment with music, and no phones, no stuff upsetting or bothering you, just sitting there and really sharing an experience with the listeners is awesome.
It's an investment both ways, on the listener side and the performer side.
Absolutely.
This weekend's concert, you mentioned, it brings together like 11 composers from across the country, I think something like that.
Something like that.
So I mean, that's a big number, like you said, maybe a Guinness World Record, though we're not going to confirm that. In terms of commissions, I mean, it doesn't happen often. What are you most looking forward to this weekend?
Oh, I just can't wait to hear everybody's thoughts. It's going to be so fun, and I know this orchestra is great. I've worked with it before, and it's just an honor to be asked to be a part of it, and it makes me move forward with my music, it's all about going through this process of getting stuff from my head to paper to the musicians.
And it's such an honor to have you here in Winnipeg to hear your work right here in town. That's a pretty exciting thing.
Thank you.
I want to thank you so much for your time this afternoon, for coming by the studio. You can hear Christine Jensen's piece performed by the WJO, the Winnipeg Jazz Orchestra, this weekend. 2 chances, in fact. Sunday, November 19th, 2 p.m. and 7:30 p.m., both at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, of course. For tickets, you can head to winnipegjazzorchestra.com. The show is called Suite 150, A Big Band Portrait.